Oh my gosh, look at this cute notebooks. I love sloths and I love butterflies. So you can find this awesome notebooks, line notebooks on lifewithfrancy.com/shop. And in there, I also have my journal as well. So go check it out. Anyways, you can find the link in the description of the episode. Hello, welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another in business and personal life. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, let's get the show started. Today's conversation was thanks to Podmatch, an amazing community for podcast hosts and podcast guests to do amazing collaborations like this one. And they also have tools and resources to help anybody in the podcasting community. Now, let's welcome Rich Lewis to the show, who is an author, speaker, and coach who focuses on certain prayers as means of inner transformation. He teaches centering prayer in both local and virtual communities and offer one-on-one coaching. Rich newest book is titled Sitting with God, A Journey to Your True Self Through Centering Prayer. I really love this. I can't wait to start this conversation. So tell us, Rich, what is life with you?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. And what the question again is, what is life? Say the question again. I've never been
Yeah,
asked
what
that
is
question.
life with you?
What is life with me? Oh,
Yeah.
um, well, I hope it's fun and exciting. Um, I mean, I think, and we'll talk about centering prayer. I
Mhm.
think my life has changed because of centering prayer. It's given me kind of a new excitement for life and being more present in the everyday moment and hopefully doing what the present moment requires. So centering prayer has really changed my life. It's moved me out of my comfort zone. It's pushed me to try and do new things. I think it's made me a better listener. It's made me more present. It's
Mm.
given me an excitement for life that I didn't have before. So how does that answer your question?
I really like that. I love that. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure. Um, well, centering prayer, I didn't always practice centering prayer. I stumbled across it in late 2013. So prior to that, um, I had known that sitting in silence was powerful, and I had read that in a number of books, particularly by a gentleman by the name of Carl McColman, talked a lot about silence and how powerful it was. So prior to centering prayer, I would just sit, and it was painfully brutal, and I would just kind of make myself sit for 1 minute or 2 minutes. But then luckily I came across a book in late 2013. I was perusing Amazon simply looking for a book to read, and I found a book called Healing the Divide: Recovering Christianity's Mystic Roots by Amos Smith. So it kind of piqued my interest, and as I began reading this book, he talked about a silent meditation practice that he had been doing for, I think, at least 20 years up until that point,
Mm.
called centering prayer. So that immediately piqued my interest because I knew sitting in silent, wordless meditation, silent, wordless prayer was powerful. I just didn't know how to do it. So centering prayer kind of, and we can talk about how you do it. It made it easier for me to sit in silence with God. So I guess I discovered centering prayer in late 2013 in his book. And then I reached out to him on his website and we began a back and forth email dialogue where I just was asking him questions about his book, asking him questions about centering prayer. And then we became actually friends, and we continue to talk about once a month, even though he's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. We continue to talk. And I'm joking when I say this. It's his fault that I wrote a book. He actually nudged me to write a book. He had written that book, and at the time he was a pastor, and he said it was probably a little bit more academic, and it'd be nice if someone wrote a more easier to read book for everyday people getting up and going to work on centering prayer. And he challenged me to write my book, which came out in August of 2020 in the middle of COVID, which maybe was a
Mm.
perfect time for it. But that's, I guess, a little bit about me. Centering prayer. found me in Amazon, perusing, looking for a book to read, and I haven't looked back. I've been practicing centering prayer really since late 2013 uh, on an everyday basis, most of the time, twice a day.
Wow. That takes discipline. And so how did the book come about?
Um, well, he challenged me to write a book. So I remember I think that was I think it was around April, May of 2014. He said, you need to write a book. And I said, well, how do you do that? Because I had never written anything
Mhm.
of any major length other than five or six. Luckily, I didn't have to write a whole lot in college, which um, so I maybe only wrote 5 or 6 pages. And I can't write a book. So I said, well, what do you mean? Um, Try writing a book. And he said, for the first thing he said, and this is email back and forth conversations, he said, just kind of jot down single sentence statements of your thoughts on centering prayer. So I remember doing that and emailing him back, single sentence statements. And then he came back with, great, there's your chapters. Go write. And I thought, well, I'm not just going to write a huge book of 13 or 14 chapters. So I thought, well, all right, maybe I'll pick one of them and see what happens. And I picked one. I took a couple weeks to write what I thought would be a chapter on that one topic. And then I emailed it back to him and thought he would come back with, never mind, this was a terrible idea. But he came back with, no, you have something there. This is a unique, fresh perspective. I like it. You need to continue. So then and I'll pause for a second. Look like you might wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, the part of your story that is in the book that you share with the book readers.
Say that again, or did I mention that in the books? What you're saying?
Yeah, what did you mention in the book?
What did I mention in the book about? What
Yeah, what is
I
the
want to make
book
sure.
about?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Let
Well,
me
the
hold
book.
on. Oh, okay, awesome. And can you share with us what is the book about?
Sure. The book is titled "Sitting with God: A Journey to Your True Self Through Centering Prayer," and it's for a couple of people, but it's really one for people that the idea of sitting in silence as a way of praying to God. A kind of an introductory book to what is centering prayer and how you do it. It can also help people that have been practicing for a while and help them kind of go deeper in their practice. And it really just shares, my journey. So I get vulnerable in the book and I talk about, what centering prayer is to me. I talk about how I started it. I talk about the fruits of the practice and how it has helped me. Um, and then I just had fun in the book. I had a chapter that kind of talked about Jesus and what do the people that study Jesus, the historical Jesus, what do they have to say about him? What can we say about him that's true? So I have a chapter on, what do they think is true about Jesus, the man who walked this earth. And then I had kind of a chapter also on Jesus. We're just talking about the humanity of Jesus and that, he shared in our humanity. So it was just kind of a fun book to share about centering prayer for new people, existing practitioners, share my journey, share the fruits and share a little bit of what I learned about the historical Jesus.
Okay. How do you begin a centering prayer practice?
Sure. Should I describe what it is first, and then we'll get into that?
Okay.
Okay. So centering prayer itself has been around since the early 1970s. It was actually created by three Trappist monks, so three Catholic priests created centering prayer in the early 1970s. They saw in the non-Christian world a lot of meditation going on, and they wanted something for the Christian group. So they created centering prayer in the early 1970s, and they began doing it amongst themselves, other clergy, and then more importantly, sharing it with the public because anybody could try centering prayer. And centering prayer is really considered, it is meditation, but it's also considered fostering and deepening your relationship with God. So during centering prayer, we believe we're opening to the presence and actions of God within us. We don't think we're God, but we think the divine is within us and we're connecting to God within us and letting God act in us, pray in us during this time. So it's really considered meditation, but also a relationship with God.
Mm.
Um, and how you do centering prayer is you sit comfortably with your eyes closed, and then to begin your prayer time interiorly, you introduce what we call a sacred word of usually one or two syllables. So it could be love, it could be a color, it could be Jesus, it could be ocean, and you interiorly say that word to signify your opening to the presence and actions of God within. And then as you're sitting there in silence, when do you begin engaging your thoughts? And what I mean by that is when you begin thinking about what you might do after your sit and the errands you have to do, or if you begin thinking about things you were doing before you sat down for your centering prayer sit, you realize you're no longer sitting with God in the present moment. You're sitting with your thoughts and your planning and your plotting. So then you reintroduce that sacred word interiorly to let go of these engaged thoughts and come back to the purpose of your sit, of just sitting with God. And then you let go of the word itself as well. So you use that word when needed to keep returning to God in the present moment. So sometimes you naturally catch yourself and you don't need the word. Other times you realize, there I go again, and you kind of bring that word back to your mind to come back to the present moment. So that's how you do centering prayer. And you can do it as long as you'd like. I guess the contemplative outreach is so that the three Trappist monks that I mentioned, one of them created kind of the main centering prayer organization in the 1980s. In 1984, the contemplative outreach was created, which their website is contemplativeoutreach.org. And it's really it's kind of the main centering prayer organization with a ton of resources on that site. Um, but um, essentially, and I forgot what I was saying.
You're fine.
But I guess the main point is, or I think I was talking about when you're how long do you practice
The
centering prayer?
practice, yes.
The contemplative outreach recommends 20 minutes because sometimes it can take that long to settle into the silence. That's why I mentioned the contemplative outreach. I was talking about how long you would sit, but initially you might not want to try 20 minutes because that could seem like forever.
A lot,
So you
yeah.
might want to try 5 minutes or so. So
Mhm.
I think so to come back to your question was, I guess, how does one begin a centering prayer practice? What I would recommend is, one, if make a commitment to try it for 30 days and make it the first thing you do in the morning
Mhm.
before you begin your day and do anything, and just make it 5 minutes perhaps, and just see how it goes and see if this type of practice resonates with you or not. And if it truly doesn't, that's okay. There's lots of contemplative practices that you can try. But if it does resonate with you, then at that point you can kind of increase the time from 5 to 10 or 15 or even 20 minutes. And then after a while, then you can add a second sit later in the day or in the evening and do the same thing with that sit if you need to, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then before you know it, you might have kind of a lifetime practice where you're easily practicing centering prayer twice a day for 20 minutes, and kind of taking a look back at some of the fruits, and we'll talk about it, of how God has graced you with fruits of the practice and how it has changed you.
Yeah, and twice a day for 20 minutes might sound like a lot, but at the same time, it's like, how can you not take that time for yourself? Like you have to take that time to quiet the world, the TV, cell phone, technology, and things like that. But yeah, but you're gonna say something about uh the benefits of doing this practice.
Sure, sure. And for me, it is the first thing I do before I begin my day, no matter what day it is, even on the weekend. So when I get up, I practice my centering prayer to begin my day, and then my second sit is usually in the early afternoon, usually right before lunch. I'll take my second sit, but centering prayer has a kind of a, where I'll just say meditation, contemplative prayer, where you're just slowing down, has a way of giving you back time. Because if you think about it, during centering prayer, we're letting go of our engaged thoughts. And that letting go posture comes with us into our everyday life. So you learn to let go of what the current moment doesn't require of you and hone in and focus on what the current moment requires of you. So, for example, a couple of years back, work was really, really busy for me, and I was fortunate that I could work. Well, actually, that was pre-COVID, so I was actually working in an office, but work was very busy, and I realized maybe I need to sit more than twice a day, but I'll just change the length of time. So I would do my
Mhm.
first sit, for 20 minutes, and then get up, shower, and all that, eat, and drive to work. But then the second and third sits, I did them in my car in the parking lot where I worked. I just cut the sits in half and would do a 10-minute sit before lunch and then continue working, and then a 10-minute sit about 2 or 3 hours later in my car again, because work was so hectic. I needed to calm down, refocus, reset
Mhm.
myself. And what I found was I was pleasantly surprised when I would look back at the day, later in the evening, at how productive I was and how much I got done because I took the time just to sit, two more times during the workday. Some people might say, I don't have time, I'm not going to do it, I got to keep working. And I would argue centering prayer has a way of giving you back time because it slows you down. And then when you go back to the activities that you need to work on, you're kind of in a reset mode and a better frame of action to take, rather than your frantic, fast-paced, perhaps not as productive mode that you would continue in if you didn't slow down and take kind of this much needed break.
Yeah, and for this, I'm just putting myself in it, and I just became self-aware, and it sounds like you need a lot of self-awareness, to like for me, I have mental health diagnosis, and I just have different survival kits for those. But
Hmm.
I love the fact that you're reminding me of having a daily practice, and not just wait till, like, for anxiety to be in the danger zone for me to have a practice to do. Let's do something before uh the emotional roller coaster comes in.
No, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point because you can, um, you're right. You're kind of not allowing that to happen because of whatever practices you put in place. And I have fun, and actually I will have fun with centering prayer too. So I make it a neat routine. So I might journal before it and just jot down things that are weighing on my mind or bothering me, or I might journal things I want to do, or goals I want to do, or things I want to accomplish that day, or that kind of stuff. So I'll sort of just journal, let them go to God, and then do my centering prayer sit. And then after my
Mm,
sit, I'll just read a little bit from whatever book I'm reading. Whether it's a novel or a nonfiction book, I'll read a little bit from that as well. So I'll turn my centering prayer time, at least the morning one, into a little bit longer. So I might go 30 to 40 minutes of kind of a neat time where I'm journaling, I'm sitting with God, and then I'm just reading for a few more minutes from a book, and then I'm getting up and beginning my day.
mm.
So it
Yep.
becomes a
I I
nice routine.
I love it. I'm here like you're changing me because like I do pray, but my prayers are like at randoms and then sometimes in my journaling. But you're taking it to another level because yeah, you're doing the journaling and yeah, you are, which is what I say, just get everything that you have in your brain out on paper, but then to do a centering prayer after the journaling, like I have never done that before. I have never thought about it. I might have a random prayer before I start journaling just so I can get to the root of the problem if I'm really in anxiety or something like that. But like to like get everything out and then come back to have some quiet time. Wow, you are blowing my mind right now.
Because I think of it as, and I'm a big believer in affirmations. So I'll write down, affirmations of these are like single sentence statements of things I want to accomplish in my life, whether it's family goals or relationship goals or career goals or financial goals or body and health type of goals. But what I like to read them and then give them to God and let them go to God and let them brew with God while I'm sitting and centering prayer, so that I think of it as I'm partnering with God on, are these things I should be doing, and I let them go to God. And and then kind of keep looking at them and making sure they still belong on the list. And if I'm not feeling excited about them, or I feel like that's not something I should do, I take it off the list. Or if I should tweak it, I tweak it. And as long as it's not harming me or others, and I'm excited about it, even if it's out of my comfort zone, I'll keep it on the list. But I think of it as I'm partnering with God and letting them go to God while I sit in centering prayer, and just continuously bringing them to God, so that together we're doing what I should be doing, not just what I think, but what God thinks I should be working on as well.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would like my listeners to know about you or your mission?
I would just challenge people to try. If the idea of sitting in silence is daunting and scary, I would just challenge them to try it. So try it for 30 days. Make it the first thing you do in the morning before you begin your day, and just try it for 1 to 5 minutes. And then after the 30 days, kind of look back and reflect on, well, how did it go, and what did you think? And is this a practice you think you'd like to continue, and maybe go a little bit longer in the morning, and then eventually add a second sit. So I would just challenge everybody to take a daily dose of silence.
I love that. We all need that. Where can my listeners find you?
The best place to find me is silenceteaches.com. I have a free ebook on centering prayer. So if they want to just learn a little bit more about this practice, if they subscribe to my website, they'll get the free ebook, which they can read in a few minutes, and learn more about this practice, and maybe even try it, to see if it's something that makes sense for them, and can help them as well.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for visiting my show.
No, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, and hopefully this will be helpful for your community.
Yeah, it definitely like I'm just learning how to be self-aware. So like that is going to take me to a whole new level. So I'm glad that I had this conversation with you.
Terrific, terrific. Glad to hear that.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Life with Francie podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can find my show in all major platforms as well as my YouTube channel. On the show notes, you will find the links for my guests as well for me. And another way to support is to follow, like, and subscribe, depending on the app. And if you will feel in your heart, leave a review that will help others to find the show. Thank you so much. Hope you have a blessed day.